Hi everyone, Scorp here, doing another video on what I think are some of the best cards in the game. Today going over what I think are the top 10 spells in order from pretty strong to extremely strong. So starting off at number 10, one of the cards that I put in almost all of my decks is Soul of the Pure. I really like the life point recovery. I really like a life point recovery card in every deck, just to avoid, just to have an option to avoid getting burned out. Depending on what a meta would look like, you might want a couple of these if needed, especially in this game where if you don't need a card, you can just discard it, and then you draw an extra card next turn. If you know in a matchup, some matchups you need 3 of these, and some matchups you need none of them. It's not a bad card to have in your deck because you can just discard it, and it's discarded for free. Soul of the Pure just happens to be the one that does the most life point regen in the game, so it's the one that I pick most often because it's just the most card efficient. I'd rather put in a card, the most effective card for something, because my other alternative is to use like a weak version of it, but then I'd need 2 cards to get the same effect. And when you have really strong decks, you don't want to have to use. You only you're limited by how many cards you can play a turn, right? And the number of turns a duel plays out to is pretty finite, and you can play 1 card a turn. So Soul of the Pure is kind of is the strongest card you can play in a turn if you want to regen life points. So definitely something to keep in mind. Next up, at number 9, we have Dark Piercing Light. This card is absolutely amazing at making your opponent have headaches trying to play around this card. Especially if they're using flip creature type strategies. You can flip up their Magician of Faith and then they can't get another copy of Darkness Approaches. Or you can just flip up all their creatures and they just lost an entire route of Darkness Approaches buffs from Mystical Elf. So they effectively lost just plus 2400, plus 2400 on all their creatures. In addition, you can see what your opponent has face down, which is great for looking for traps, looking for weak creatures to pick off. It can also stop flip effects like Maneater Bug. So if your opponent's playing a really nasty and annoying control deck where they're just destroying all of your creatures with monster effects, Dark Piercing Light can be one of those cards that really helps to stop that. I didn't put Stop Defense on this list, which can also do kind of which can help with that also, but it would be a card that I'd combo with Dark Piercing Light. And really, I don't think Stop Defense is strong enough on its own, unless you were really having problems with control decks, in which case then it's probably close to being able to be played. But a lot of times I'd stick with Dark Piercing Light, and if I need more disruption, then I'd go towards cards like Stop Defense. But I think your first choice for disruption is Dark Piercing Light. And then next up, we have Dimension Hole at number 8. Dimension Hole is a wonderful card usually for being aggressive. It can also help you get around the Labyrinth terrain. You can also run from your opponent with this card. If you really need to get away, you can juke left with your deck leader, play this on your right first, send it to the right, deck leader goes to the left, and then next turn after they chase down your deck leader, you teleport to the other side of the map. But usually this card is mostly for being super aggressive. This card is great for say you go first, you play this card, you move your deck leader 1 space forward, you play this card in front of you, you move it a space forward. On the next turn, your opponent's playing more of a defensive deck, They move to the side. You move this card and flip it face up one space forward. You're in the middle of the arena, and then you move another space forward and attack them with a creature that you played because you have 7 summoning power. So you could just play, I don't know, a 4,000 attack beat stick and then one-shot your opponent with it. That seems pretty good to me. Yeah, Dimension Hole's a super aggressive card that does great, especially if your deck leader has increased movements for same type friendlies, and it's really a replacement for double movement for your leader. So you can play super aggressive. So Dimension Hole, definitely, it's definitely worth the 50 deck cost. I believe it was nerfed to this from the base game. There are some decks that I want to play this in. I don't want to play this in every deck, but this is definitely a card I would, if I'm trying to play super aggressive, it's going in my deck. Next up, we have Solomon's Lawbook at number 7. Solomon's Lawbook is a card that is just an enabler to some strategies. That's why I put it here. This card is like if I were playing Exodia, or I'm playing a combo OTK deck like the Immortal deck that I showcased probably over a month ago now. And that was a absolutely brutal OTK deck. Solomon's Lawbook is one of the few cards that kind of lets you pseudo-cheat. Basically, this card can be looked at in a lot of decks as a draw 5. Basically, you're just going to discard 5 cards you didn't want, and then you have 5 new cards, and hopefully your new hand has what you needed. It also, if you play one of these face down, it's basically like you played 0 cards that turn because this card's useless, pretty useless by itself without being activated. But on the next turn, you can play 2 cards, or on a later turn, you can play a second card, which is extremely valuable. I could see a point where if you're playing Exodia against another person, you could play down 3 of these, get yourself into a slightly decent position, and then you can play 4 Exodia pieces in one turn. Which seems kind of ridiculous, but I would say that that's probably one of the more common ways that Exodia would have to be played. I don't think you'd ever really be able to get to play Exodia just because the Exodia win condition in this game is extremely difficult against another person. You can't have any of your Exodia pieces be even spellbound, and just spellbinding another one of your opponent's cards is pretty easy to do. So, I don't know. Exodia is not the greatest, but this just enables OTK decks and kind of things like that, where you play like double Riryoku in one turn and then Tremendous Fire. And it's just a huge enabler to get through your deck really quick. Also, if you're trying to find exactly one card, it's really good for that. So definitely had to make this list in some respect. Definitely not the strongest card, but it definitely enables so many other things that you have to consider it. Next up, at number 6. Seems to just be going up this list right now, but I did kind of organize them in terms of what I'd really want in my decks. Magical Neutralizing Force Field. This thing in the base game used to cost 10 deck cost. Whoever put this thing, designed this card, and put it into a game at 10 deck cost is crazy. So it has multiple effects. The first one is, first effect removes all spellbinding from all cards. Your opponent's playing an Ancient Jar deck, they're going to be super obnoxious to you, but this is one of your, if you have 3 of these in your deck, you can try to fight back against them with this. Second thing, removes all increase and decrease power effects that are not like leader powers or field effects. So this is like Jiraigumo's effect, but it works on everything. So your opponent flips an eye armor and beats your creature by 500. Well, you flip this, and then you attack over their eye armor that's now 600 attack. This card is absolutely way too good at doing stuff like that. In addition, you guys don't like those mirror walls. You don't like the Royal Decrees, a bunch of other traps that are face up. Or you use Dark Piercing Light and you see your opponent has a couple Swords of Revealing Lights face up. Guess what? It only destroys trap cards. Sorry. I thought it destroyed spells too. I don't know if it doesn't. Well, I know it destroys full range traps, so that's what I usually use it for in that context. It destroys mirror walls. It destroys Royal Decrees super well, so your opponent has some annoying full range traps. Also, if you're playing an OTK deck that does Ruriokus, you might want to have this in there to get rid of the Goblin Vans. So yeah, this card, it does so much for 25 deck cost. I could easily see this thing getting nerfed to like 40 deck cost and probably still seeing play with all of those really good effects. The reason this is good is not because of any one of these effects being so good. It's the fact that all three of these effects are good and are just, each one is almost good enough to see play, and then you can do all three at once is really good. Do be careful, it does affect your own cards. I wouldn't play it as much in multiple Eye Armor, Green Kappa, Muka decks, but just keep that in mind. Next up, actually right above it at number 5, is Change of Heart. Change of Heart is... This is one of those cards that kind of just ends games, and playing around it is obnoxious. Especially, like, the computer doesn't use it well because it only use it if you have a creature adjacent to your deck leader. Against another person, this card is just absolutely vicious. Like, there's so many uses where you just take control of your opponent's biggest creature, hit over their second biggest creature for a bunch of damage, and then you have just like a spell card or something to just run over their card, because it's still yours, so it tries to fuse it and your spell card just destroys the monster. Like, it's just a super brutal card to play around. Any card that's, like, if you change the terrain around your deck leader, like, any creature within 2 spaces of your deck leader just kills you. Like, you're gonna get hit for, what, 3,000 probably because of this card? It's definitely warranted of the 80 deck cost. There's other things you can steal. You can steal your opponent's Dark Hole that they just brought back from Magician of Faith or something. I mean, there's a whole bunch of use cases for it. I mean, your opponent plays a White Hole, you steal their White Hole and then activate a Dark Hole, and then destroy all of their cards. So, I mean, things like that just happen. There's just so many good things you can steal. And the better your opponent's cards are, the better this card becomes. There's a reason it's been banned in the regular game for so long. And this card got banned very quick after the ban list started. And it stayed banned for a very long time because... And that was just taking control of a monster. You can take control of their spell and traps. Especially good if you pair it with a Dark Piercing Light so you can actually see what all of their stuff is. Or you can also just ram their big creature into one of their Gravity Binds, and then you've effectively 2-for-1 your opponent with this card. So, great card for doing stuff like that. Next up, we have Mimicat. This card is just straight up, it's a better version of Grave Robber, it's a better version of Monster Reborn. It's the two of them combined into one card. it's an extra copy of any card in the game. Just full stop, extra copy of any card in either player's deck, which that's pretty good. Having an extra copy of any card in the game. Sometimes you just want to play 6 copies of one of your cards. This lets you play 6 copies of that card. Also, if you copy a monster, you don't have to use summoning power to play that creature. So you could copy a Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon in your opponent's graveyard, and instead of paying 12 stars for it, you get to pay a whole 0 because this is a spell card. Yeah, extra copy of anything. You can also say, if you're only looking for monsters, you can change this out to be a Monster Reborn if you want to save 30 deck cost. You can do the same thing with Grave Robber if you want to save 20 deck cost. And if you really, really want 9 copies of something, you can use 3 of these and 3 of either Grave Robber or Monster Reborn, depending on if it's a creature or spell card. And then you can basically play 9 of the same card in your deck, which there aren't that many cards that I would pick 9 of, but I think one of the number 2 card on this list is probably what I would pick for that. But having a 9 of in your deck is really, really strong. Pegasus usually uses this on you in the campaign to revive Tremendous Fires, and him having 6 Tremendous Fires in his deck is extremely dangerous, right? So that's really this card is really strong, and you can kind of be annoying to your opponent. You can also steal one of their really good cards, so great utility card all around. Next up, we're going to number 3, Heavy Storm. This card gets rid of all of your opponent's annoying traps, a bunch of spells that they have face down. You know, you can wipe out that Swords of Revealing Light your opponent just revived with Mimicat. You can wipe out the Tremendous Fire. You're gonna go for a combo OTK, and you can wipe out the Goblin Fan that's face down. You can wipe out that bad reaction to Samachi, so you can just regen yourself. And then this is not to mention the cover that this provides for stopping lethals, or for creating lethals. Your opponent plays a trap next to their deck leader to try to save themselves, and then instead of attacking in with your 8,000 attack beat stick to get hit with a shadow spell, you just Heavy Storm first and you guarantee lethal. I do this quite often in our playthroughs. Once I get this card from Mako, this card just guarantees lethals, and there's nothing else in the game that really guarantees a lethal like Heavy Storm does. Because if you get rid of all of your opponent's spells and traps, or all of their traps, you don't get interacted with on your turn, other than like leader abilities, but most of them don't. Like, if like open card kind of annoys you and some other things, but really Heavy Storm is just going to get rid of the cards that actually stop you from lethaling them, unless they have like a leader power that's destroy specific enemy type, in which case, well, you're never gonna have lethal. I'm sorry, you got hard countered. Good luck, go next. Which is one of the biggest shames of those leader powers sometimes. There are just some leaders that just straight up counter other decks. So that's why I put Heavy Storm at number 3. Heavy Storm is really worth 50 deck cost, and if you're playing aggressively, it's super good. If you're playing more of a mid-range deck, it's exceedingly good. And then Control finds a great use for it in actually destroying opponent's spell and traps that they're trying to set up with to try to hang with you in the long game, and then they just can't because Heavy Storm. Next up at number 2, Dark Hole is just... This card just goes like you can make it go so much plus advantage. It's absolutely ridiculous. Your opponent goes first, plays a card. You go second and play this card face down. Your opponent plays another card, and then you dark hole the field, and now you have initiative. Oh, look at that. Your opponent's going first advantage is gone, and they probably just, because a lot of strong decks are probably going to equip things a bunch, they might have just played out 6 or 7 cards from their deck, and you destroyed it all with 1 card. So, Dark Hole, absolutely incredible. It not only gets rid of monsters, it gets rid of spell cards too, which includes traps and magic cards. This card will completely devastate your opponent sometimes. It could also set up a great counter lethal if you have this card face down. Your opponent gets really close to lethaling you and they have a bunch of creatures in your face. You dark hole them, get rid of all their creatures, and then you lethal them back by playing a big card out of your hand with your initiative. Definitely a card to look for. You can also do nasty things where White Hole exists in this game, so you can use that to make the effect one-sided on your opponent, which is really, really nasty. But also, if you're just playing a really slow game against somebody, and they're not pushing hard against you, but they're playing out a bunch of cards, and you just decide to not play out many cards, you can play out like 2 or 3 cards to stop them, and then they play out 10, and then you dark hole the board, and they're down at 20 cards in their deck, you have 30, and now you're going to basically put them on, they have to finish you with the last 20 cards on their deck. So Dark Hole is just exceedingly good. I might even say it should probably be 99 deck cost. Also, it's nice that this card's super easy to obtain. Just get a 3 in a row of Dark Energies, which there's a whole bunch of enemies that use Dark Energies, so nice and easy to get this card. And then, not last but not least, at number 1, to probably no one's surprise, is Riryoku. This card is absolutely broken. This thing does a ton of damage to your opponent. It's the best equip in the game. Increase by 2,000, it's a plus 2,000, 2,000 on a creature. When you just use this to start the duel, if you were playing against another person and you decided that 4,000 life points isn't enough starting life points, which it probably isn't, and you're both starting at 8,000, this is a plus 4,000, plus 4,000, which is pretty good. Not to mention, you can use this in OTKs, because you can use 2 of these and then a Tremendous Fire and just kill somebody. That's 4,000 damage. If you use 3 of these, you can do 8,000 in a turn. Absolutely ridiculous that it does that much damage to your opponent. Then on top of that, this just creates really strong creatures that your opponent has a really hard time dealing with. It's hard to deal with a creature that has plus 2,000, plus 2,000. It's just really hard to deal with it. They have to use either like a magical neutralizing force field, or a Jiraiya or Happy Lever effect, or they just have to do straight up creature destruction, like Maneater Bug effect or something. Or they have to somehow get something that's stronger than your creature, which you're going to put that on something like a Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon. So, like, they're probably going to have to get over a 5,300 attack beat stick, which that's not easy. Especially not in this game. So, absolutely an incredible card. Probably the only card in the game that I would say should just straight up be banned. And you shouldn't be able to use it. So, these are my top 10 spells. Let me know down below in the comments, or yeah, just let me know what you guys think of this list, and if there's any spell cards that I really missed out on. mostly doing these type of top 10 videos because somebody was asking for like a list of some of the best cards in the game. And they couldn't find it anywhere, so I figured I'd help them out a little. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a nice day.